Hello and welcome. You're watching Fault Lines. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. This week on the show, we get you all the details and explain to you the biggest conflict that is unfolding in Pakistan. The Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict. Why is it unfolding the way it is? Why is it that Pakistan is now looking at a multi-front war in its backyard? Next on the show, we tell you more about Myanmar. The conflict is escalating. The military junta is now increasing the strikes as civilian population continues to take the brunt of a war that frankly the world doesn't have a solution for. And lastly, we tell you why is it that the Washington versus Venezuela crisis is escalating. 9 strikes have taken place. US says it is hitting out at narco-terrorists. Venezuela thinks otherwise. We get you all those details about how it's unfolding in the Caribbean. Well, viewers, first story on the show is the Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict. Dangerous decisions have been taken for decades by Pakistan. It has fanned and created terror outfits. And well, since 2021, things and the tables literally changed and turned for Islamabad. And now all of that is coming to hit Pakistan very significantly. We break that entire conflict down for you in detail, tell you how is it that Pakistan is now staring at a crisis and a conflict that is set to probably escalate, given that the Taliban Afghanistan feels that they need to respond in the same coin to Pakistan. Let's break this down for you. First and foremost, what is the kind of numbers? Let's first tell you the numbers and then we tell you more in terms of how this is unfolding. 37 Afghanistan civilians have been killed. 425 have been wounded. This is the first important aspect to understand, that this conflict, which has been going on for some time between Pakistan and Afghanistan along the Durand line, it's a long border that the two countries face. Why is it that now they are bombing each other and bombing each other's civilians with such ferocity? In terms of Pakistani soldiers, 23 soldiers have been killed, and that tells you that these strikes that have been made by the Afghanistan Taliban have actually hit out at precision military strikes and military targets, which is what Afghanistan has been looking at. In terms of the TTP terrorists, there are about 6,000 militants. I still go with the word terrorists. Every time there is an act which is against the state, it is an act of war. It is an act of terror at least. And 6,000 terrorists. In terms of Pakistani security personnel, 2,400 have been killed this year alone. This is the single biggest and single most important statistic to understand how things are unfolding for Pakistan. For Asim Munir, this is the number of funerals that have taken place of his soldiers this year alone. And this year hasn't even ended so far for Asim Munir, frankly. He had a failed war with India, with the Operation Sindoor, and there's continuous pounding from the Afghanistan side along the entire Durand line, the 2,400 soldiers that have been killed from Pakistan. 17 civilians have been killed in Kandahar, and lastly 600 plus attacks have taken place so far as 2024 is concerned. Now this tells you the volatility that exists right now as far as the Pakistan-Afghanistan border dispute is concerned. Now what is this entire issue all about? That needs to be understood in detail. I'm going to play out this report that tells you why things have actually come to such a stop, because 4 years back you had Pakistan celebrating the exit of America and entry of Taliban. Just 4 years back, they were the ones who were extremely happy. They felt that they had a huge leverage in the entire region. They could actually ensure that India will have no access to Afghanistan and there further to the Central Asian regions completely. 4 years later, it seems Pakistan not only has lost the leverage but has been completely checkmated. What this entire issue is all about and how it's likely to pan out from here on, this report tells you more.
Back in the early 1990s, Pakistan helped shape the Taliban. The ISI saw them as strategic depth, a proxy against India in Afghanistan. The gamble seemed smart until it blew up. When the Taliban returned to power in Kabul in 2021, Islamabad expected influence. Instead, it inherited a threat. In 2024, terror attacks in Pakistan more than doubled from 517 to 1,099. Terror-related deaths rose by 45%, hitting over 1,000. At the heart of this surge is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP. Last year, it launched 482 attacks, causing 558 deaths, more than half of all terror fatalities. And nearly all the violence is concentrated along the western border provinces, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. This is where 96% of attacks and deaths occur. The contested 2,600-kilometer Durand line between Pakistan and Afghanistan has become a flashpoint. Border skirmishes, infiltration and airstrikes have escalated sharply. Early this year, fighting shut the critical Torkham crossing for nearly a month. Crippling trade and supplies. Then in October 2025, the worst clash in years. Afghan Taliban forces attacked Pakistani posts. Pakistan responded with air and ground strikes. Pakistan claims about 200 Taliban fighters were killed. The Taliban says 58 Pakistani soldiers also died. Numbers are disputed there as well. The fallout isn't just military. Afghan refugees face mass expulsions and border crossings remain unstable, disrupting both lives and economies on both sides. So how did Pakistan go from sponsor to target? The answer, a dual game, backing militant proxies abroad for strategic gain, but failing to rein them in when they turned inwards. The TTP, based and sheltered across the border, is the bitter payoff of that miscalculation. An NDTV World Report.
Well, viewers, when you cultivate terror as a tool, history never forgets. And Pakistan's frontier strategy has backfired. The fire it actually thought it ignited is now burning inside along its borders. And as we showed you the number of casualties of its civilians, of its soldiers, you can understand what is the kind of crisis that is lying ahead of it and of Pakistani military. Let's get in General Meston to talk more on this, to understand how this is likely to pan out from here, and more importantly, will this mean that Pakistan will continue to face a crisis as far as its Durand line is concerned? The border that exists right now is now one of the biggest crises for Asim Munir, isn't it, General Meston?
Gauri, absolutely. See, the fact of the matter is the fault lines between Pakistan and Afghanistan have been since 1893. And when I say Pakistan, I would say then British India, because Pakistan was not there even. This is the fault line. And this fault line was basically created by the Britishers to divide the Pashtuns on the both sides of the Durand line. Otherwise, the original borders prior to 1893 was west of Indus River. And this is where I came to know when I was in Afghanistan, and I got a deep insight into the history which were through the books of written in Pashto by Afghans. Now, Pakistan, when it was created, Afghanistan was the last country to officially recognize them in the United Nations. They were the last country. And the enmity goes back since then, because Pakistan had lost all the elections in the 1937 provincial elections. Muslim League got 0 votes in Northwest Frontier Province and 0 in Sindh. and only one in Pakistan, Punjab.
Yes.
So otherwise, everywhere, the Indian National Congress had won the votes, and of course, in this place, Northwest Frontier Province, it was Bacha Khan's party, that is Frontier Gandhi. So the animosity between these countries goes since then, and they are sworn in enemies. I make this statement very, very properly. Number two, when I was posted as the defense attaché in Afghanistan, I recollect Defense Minister of Afghanistan was invited to all the military installations and operations room in Pakistan. You know, when the Defense Minister came back, he told me and he showed me all the video evidence, which I handed over to the Indian Army. In all the operation rooms, military has the operations room in everywhere, whether it was Corps, Command, Army, their general headquarters, everywhere India and Afghanistan were depicted as enemies. An enemy in ops room is always depicted by red color.
Yeah.
So this again shows that they are enemies. And of course, Durand Line has never been recognized by any of the Afghan government since 1893.
Yeah, this hasn't been. Which
Taliban
brings me to ask you one thing, sir.
Yeah.
That this is Asim Munir's worst nightmare, and it continues to increase simply because now India has opened those lines of communication with Afghanistan, which Pakistan thought would never happen because they were the ones who thought that they are the ones with leverage, but that isn't the case anymore.
See, for any Pakistani general, this issue of Afghanistan has been a nightmare since beginning. And even now it has become biggest nightmare because see, their strategy in Afghanistan, Pakistan's strategy was, to cultivate them and thinking, they are Muslims and that brotherhood will be there. But they didn't realize Afghans hate Pakistan the most and Indians are loved the most. So this is the order of the day there. We are the most loved country and the most hated country. You can take any country, Russia, United States, Turkey, the most hated is Pakistan. So imagine this nightmare continues and will continue. And I had no doubt that this problem will occur because Pakistan always thought that, they can divide the Pashtuns on both sides of the Durand Line and use them, exploit them, keep them illiterate, uneducated, just with the act of jihad. And therefore, it will remain the biggest nightmare for Asim Munir. And now it is beyond their control because they were the ones who have taken jihad and terrorism all over the world. Now it is paying them very rightfully, and it will continue to pay them till the time Pakistan does not take a call to give up state terrorism. This is the only way. Otherwise, they are going to be hit very hard. And I am aware, Gauri, I must tell you, I know for very well, the Pakistan army used to take Baluchis in the aircraft, helicopters, and throw them in the hard ground over there so that all the civilians was there and the fear psychology develops here, fear psychosis. Similarly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area, and now even you have seen in Afghanistan,
right?
They don't have any inhibitions in targeting civilian population. They use their artillery, they use their helicopter gunships.
Absolutely. And military grade weaponry is actually used against civilians. What can be worse than that actually? I'm going to leave it there, General Maston. Thanks much for joining us in this edition of Fault Lines. Well, viewers, if you take off your blinkers and understand how situation is unfolding for Pakistan right now, well, the two-front war that Pakistan was always dreaming about for India is actually coming true for itself. And that is what Asim Munir is looking at. And it is not just two front, it's multiple fronts. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan. Remember, add to it the fact that there are also tensions in other parts. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, we all saw those protests. And I haven't even started about the fact that Operation Sindoor isn't over as yet. So what is Pakistan really looking at? What is Asim Munir really looking at? He's looking at a two-front, three-front war, and those numbers in terms of Pakistani soldiers possibly increasing even more. We put out those figures for you to understand. No country, not even one run by dictators, can ever accept funerals of their soldiers happening. And that is what is taking place right now in Pakistan. How long will Asim Munir be Teflon coated is the question. All right, let's turn attention now to the other story that we are tracking on the show. This is regarding Myanmar. Well, Myanmar's military is back on the offensive, and this time it's not fighting alone. After months of setback, the military junta is regaining territory. Viewers, you may ask, how is it that it's actually happening? Well, there's relentless airstrikes and there is Chinese-made weapons. Entire towns are now actually crumbling, viewers, and Beijing's quiet support is shifting the entire balance in this region. It's also raising questions about the role that it's playing in a war that many people outside of Myanmar think is now running out of options to be able to stop. Now, we're going to tell you about China's gamble. We're going to tell you about what is it that's actually taking place with regards to what is now turning out to be one of the longest running conflicts in Asia with, as I said, few options to end this. This report tells you all the details as far as why what's happening in Myanmar is likely to tip the balance in entire Asia.
Across northern Myanmar, the roar of aircraft has become a daily sound. Jaume, Sipo and Demoso, towns once controlled by ethnic resistance groups, now lie in ruins after weeks of heavy airstrikes. The junta has taken back key routes linking to China. It's part of a military comeback powered by drones, air power and foreign backing. New Chinese-made drones and guided bombs are giving the army deadly precision from the sky. Resistance fighters were once buoyed by early victories. However, they now face relentless surveillance and strikes that they can't match. Thousands of young men have been forced into service since February. Over 60,000 new conscripts are now on the front lines, replenishing an exhausted force. Meanwhile, civilians pay the price. More than 1,000 have been killed this year alone. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Entire neighborhoods have been wiped out. Schools are teaching in bunkers. Families bury loved ones beside bomb craters. And there's no semblance of normalcy. But the generals say they are restoring order. Restoring it ahead of a planned election in December that excludes most opposition parties. China, eager to prevent chaos on its border, is backing that vote and offering economic aid. Analysts say Beijing doesn't favor the junta, only instability. But its weapons, drones and diplomacies have made all the difference. Myanmar's army may be regaining ground, but it's doing so through fire and fear. And Beijing's watching closely from across the border.
Now, viewers, let's walk you through some of those numbers for you to understand why is it that the fault line that runs across Myanmar needs to be discussed, needs to be decoded in detail. Let's get you those numbers to understand why this conflict matters and will impact the entire Asian region, at least Southeast Asia for sure. Now, look at the numbers. In terms of airstrikes, 1,200 plus have actually taken place since January, just in the last 10 odd months. These are the numbers. In terms of the new junta conscripts, over 60,000 people have been added in terms of how this is adding to military junta's ability to continue striking and to prolong this even further. This number of new recruits, new additions, tells you the growing ability that the junta has. 5,000 plus Chinese-made drones have been deployed in this region. China plays a very active role in the entire Myanmar belt. Remember, there's also a China-Myanmar economic corridor. China wants this region to be completely under its direct supervision control, simply because it ensures access to the entire Strait of Malacca and Indo-Pacific, which is why Chinese role, I'm going to come back and talk more to tell you what this fault line is all about. 1,000 plus confirmed civilian deaths, again a number that should shock and shame the global community. 56 is the official, 100 plus is the unofficial townships that are unsafe for election. People were talking about elections, people were talking about how things are going to come back to normalcy. These numbers should shame all those sitting in Geneva and New York, going and talking non-stop about wars in some parts of the world, but refusing to recognize what's really happening in Myanmar. Lastly, 3 million plus people have been displaced and 4 key corridors to China have been retaken. As I said, unless you put these numbers in perspective, you can't understand the scale at which this devastation is taking place in this region, which is why it's very important to understand what's the real issue here at stake. And viewers, if you take off your blinkers to understand what's unfolding in Myanmar, it's all very easy to say that let's have elections there. Let's ensure that the military junta makes way for elected government. But can it actually take place? Can you actually hold elections in an atmosphere where there's growing instability, growing crisis, growing civilian strife? No, you cannot. By appointing a couple of election outside agencies who will oversee the election or oversee the process, you will not guarantee democracy. You will not guarantee transition of power. What you will guarantee is making sure that this issue slips under the carpet with no permanent solutions being offered. All right, on that note, we're slipping into a short break. We come back on the other side, talk more about what's unfolding in Caribbean. Why is it that US is going on blowing up boat after boat that is coming in from Venezuela? And how are these tensions set to escalate between Washington and Venezuela? Well, viewers, tensions in the Caribbean have hit a boiling point. You have US bombers and warships mass off Venezuela's coast. 9 deadly strikes have actually been carried out on what America says are drug boats. Washington says it's actually fighting narco-terrorists, but Venezuela thinks this is nothing but an invasion. Let's not forget that the Venezuelan president Maduro has a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head that the Americans have put in. And could this actually be a precursor to a possible regime change? That's the big question, but let's find out what's really happening in Caribbean right now.
An unprecedented show of American firepower in the skies above the Caribbean. This week, 2 Air Force B-1 Lancer bombers thundered up to Venezuela's coast. This just days after B-52s made a similar run. The Pentagon is terming it a bomber attack demo. Venezuela, on the other hand, considers it a threat. Behind the scenes, a powerful US Armada now patrols the region. 8 warships, stealth F-35 based in Puerto Rico, drones, and even a submarine. Officials say the build-up targets drug traffickers. Critics call it something far more dangerous, a shadow war.
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay?
Since early September, the Trump administration has launched 9 lethal strikes on boats it claims were smuggling drugs, killing at least 37 people. But none of the incidents have been independently verified. Congress is now split. Some senators warn the president may be waging war without authorization. Others say he's defending America from what he considers narco-terrorists. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has activated his militia. He claims 6 million citizens are ready to resist what he calls US colonial aggression and has also constantly been appealing for peace.
No a la guerra. No queremos una guerra en el Caribe ni en Sudamérica. No. Not war. Just peace. Not war. Se diría así. ¿Quién habla inglés aquí? Tú, Daniela. ¿Está bien así? No war, just peace, and the people in the United States. Please. Please, please, please.
With bombers overhead and warships below, this standoff now tests the Caribbean's patience.
Well, viewers, with that, we wrap things up on this edition of Fault Lines. Thanks so much for watching. We come back next week with yet another conflict, yet another war decoded for you.